Sometimes in social work research, we often use different types of standardized instruments to measure our variables. We also use non-standardized instruments such as surveys or questionnaires that we design ourselves. Knowing how to effectively design a survey is very important, since once it is copied, distributed, and returned, it will be too late to make any changes or redistribute. That is why it is important to know what you are doing and get it right before its copies are made, distributed, and completed. Let's start by learning some best practices and poor practices regarding survey design. According to Singer and Yee, which is one of your required readings, length of time is often cited by people as the reason for not participating in a research study. Including only relevant information is key. For example, you will not create survey items about sexual behaviors in your study of eating habits of older adults in a nursing home. That would not be appropriate. Provide specific instructions for your participants to answer items. Let them know to circle one or as many as apply. If you only want them to choose one item, for example, a question about ethnicity, but don't provide the instructions to circle one, you might get surveys back with several choices circled. This will make reporting an ethnic group background problematic for your write-up. Consider how long it takes to complete a survey when you are designing it. You should pilot test your survey. Give a draft copy before copying and distributing to a key member of that community of interest, to get feedback on how much time it takes for someone of that population of interest to complete it. Pilot testing also gives you information from a key member of your community of interest regarding the cultural appropriateness of the survey items and language, translation errors, etc. Also consider any cognitive or physical limitations of your participants when designing and administering the survey. For example, designing a survey for older adults might require you to use a certain font size and/or perhaps administer the survey one-on-one, reading the survey items out loud to your participants. You must also make sure that the way your items are asked have a level of measurement that is congruent to testing your H1 and statistical tests. For example, if you are designing a survey to assess the relationship between social support, as measured by number of visitors monthly, and age of participants in years at a nursing home, you must know what level of measurement these two items are in order to choose the appropriate statistical test to test your H1. All the easy questions should be at the beginning of your survey. Leave all the most sensitive questions to be asked towards the end of the survey. What is considered sensitive can sometimes be up for debate. Some would argue that asking someone's age is sensitive, but that question, if applicable to the research, is typically asked at the beginning. The next few slides give you examples of poorly designed survey items, and then, highlighted in a red box, you can see an example of a more appropriate way to design that survey item. Take a look at this example survey item. What is wrong with it? The problem with this original item is that it assumes the only adults who are parents are either biological parents or legal guardians. This is not sensitive and does not capture all of the kinds of adults who parent children. You can see the improved item design in the red box, which offers a more culturally sensitive choice of attributes or responses. Take a look at this example survey item. What's wrong with it? These two original items assume that all participants have computers at home and all participants are Christians. To avoid this socioeconomic and religious bias, the revisions of these items is a much more objective option. Take a look at this survey item. What is wrong with it? These two questions are biased. The first communicates that honors English is the only and best type of English class. The second limits the type of response from participants to give a positive rating for the training. The major threat to validity to these two items includes restriction of range. This is because of the restricted response choices, for example, levels and attributes, of the variable. The revisions offer better worded choices that give the participant a range of English courses and allows the participant to write in an other option that you might not have considered or been aware of. In addition, the item about satisfaction with training allows the participant to indicate both positive and negative options. As much as we would love getting all positive feedback, it would not be a valid measure of training satisfaction if we only allowed the participant to respond positively. What is the problem with these two items? The problem with these two items is that they ask two questions at once. This is called a double-barreled item and should be avoided. In other words, they measure two variables at once. The first item measures two things, reading frequency and helping with homework. And the second item measures hotel satisfaction and food satisfaction. Remember, each item you design on your survey should measure just one variable. This item is problematic because it is not specific. Which material? This question needs to be further broken down into components, which is what happens in this revision. Again, pilot testing is key prior to copying and distributing your survey. A draft should always be given to a key member of your target population who will take your survey and give you specific feedback in terms of how long it takes to complete, cultural appropriateness, design, etc. You will incorporate that feedback to make revisions if necessary for a final draft before copying and distributing. Now we are going to take a look at survey item design. There are four major types of survey items: closed-ended, open-ended, contingency items, and matrix items. Let's take a look at closed-ended items. On this slide in the red box, this is an example of a closed-ended item. These are items that have a fixed set of responses. This is an example of an open-ended item. Open-ended items are items in which responses are not fixed. Participants are free to write responses from their own perspective, instead of them having to choose from a few responses that you provide to them. This is sometimes beneficial because you might not have thought of all the possible types of responses, and designing an item this way can give you important information from the participant's perspective. This is an example of a contingency item. Contingency items are items intended for only some participants. Some answers depend on responses to other items. You see here that those who answer no would skip the next item. In other words, answering an item is contingent upon a specific type of response to a previous item. This is an example of a matrix item. Matrix items are an efficient format for items that have the same set of response options. Using a matrix item format in the case where several items have the same response set helps to save time and space on your survey and makes for easier readability. Ideally, when conducting survey research, a researcher always wants to have 100% completion rate. That means if you mail out 100 surveys, you hope to have all 100 surveys completed and sent back to you. However, this doesn't normally happen. In fact, it isn't unreasonable that only half of the surveys you send out will be completed by participants. However, we like to have high response rates, the number of surveys returned divided by the number of participants invited to participate, so that we can generalize our findings. Again, the higher the response rate, the more we can say that our findings are representative of a larger population. What is a good response rate? Response rate, according to Babby, 1995, fall into one of three categories. 50% equals adequate, 60% equals good, and 70% equals very good. This means that any response rate of 49% or less is considered an inadequate response rate. If your response rate is this low, inadequate, the two major threats to validity to the conclusions you can make about your study include number 1, selection bias, and number 2, low statistical power. For example, if you send out a survey to parents by mail examining parental involvement in education, you might have a selection bias. That is, those who completed the survey and sent it back to you might be systematically different than the general population. Since you mailed it out, this requires parents to have a home address, which excludes homeless parents from your survey. In addition, a low response rate results in the threat low statistical power, since only getting a few surveys back makes it difficult for you to both generalize your findings or have enough power to run any statistical analyses. Some statistical tests won't run if you don't have enough participant data. A low response rate might also be due to you not providing details at the end of the survey regarding how, when, to whom to return the completed survey. Participants might also have questions about your survey, so provide contact information so they can get in touch with you to ask their questions. There are several theories about why people participate in completing surveys in research studies. You will read about these in your required readings. In general, there are two main types of theories that explain why people choose or don't choose to participate in survey research. According to social exchange theory, social interactions depend on perception of cost and benefit of participation. If a person appraises the cost, for example, the time it takes to complete a survey, as outweighing the benefits of participation, for example, generating new knowledge for agency programming, that person won't participate in the study. However, if the benefits of the participation outweigh the costs, the person will most likely participate according to social exchange theory. Leveraged salience theory also explains participation in research. This theory adds on to social exchange theory by concluding that it is not only the cost-benefit appraisal that makes a person participate in research, but also the salience, how important the issue under study is to the participant. Therefore, if a college student received an email survey asking about feedback on student computer labs, that student might not participate if he never used the computer labs, even if he appraised the benefit of participating in the study as outweighing the cost. This is called salience. Many studies often implement the use of incentives to increase the response rate in research studies. Incentives are rewards that motivate a participant to participate. Incentives can be prepaid, lotteries, refusal conversion, or money/gifts. Prepaid incentives are rare and offer the participant a small reward in anticipation of participating. For example, before they complete the survey. Lottery incentives describe to participants that they will be entered into a raffle after participating, and a few people will be selected to win the reward. This approach is often effective from a financial perspective for the researcher, since you only have to purchase a few rewards and not provide a reward for everyone who participates. Refusal conversion is a reward that is offered only to those who initially refused to participate in the first round of survey distribution. It is an attempt to convert their refusal to participate into a positive response. This approach can be viewed by some as unfair to those who participated in the first place. This approach is usually only done when the first distribution round of surveys yielded a super small response rate. On the other hand, money/gifts are incentives that are offered to all of the participants who participated in the research, usually a $5 gift card, etc. When offered to all participants, these gifts/money amounts are usually significantly smaller than the rewards offered in a lottery approach. If you do choose to offer an incentive, be sure not to cross the line to a reward that is considered coercion. Coercion is an excessive or inappropriate reward that influences participation when otherwise a participant would not participate. Is it incentive or coercion? This you must decide by considering not just the size of the reward, but also your target population. For example, if you are conducting survey research examining leadership among social service agency CEOs, a $50 gift card might not be considered coercion because it is small considering the type of salaries CEOs make. However, if you are conducting survey research among single male fathers who are living in Section 8 housing, that same $50 reward might be crossing the line as coercion for participating. This needs to be carefully considered when designing your research study. This concludes the lecture on survey development. Please email or stop by my office with any questions.